So claims. What are claims? So many of us hear of claims when it's after a hurricane, right? So you hear about that a lot. But claims happen all the time, whether it's a leak under the sink, a bathroom shower, or the building has a leak through any of the plumbing pipes. So it's something that can happen pretty often, not just after a hurricane. So these claims are just demands from the policyholder or other parties to their insurance company to pay for their loss or damage that's covered by that policy. So the claim process begins with the notice of this claim. So then it moves into the investigation of the facts of the claim and it proceeds to the evaluation. So when you have your investigation of your claim, you want to make sure that you document everything, your dates, that it happened, you document with photos and photographs, and that way you can present your findings accordingly. So the process often involves a lengthy negotiation back and forth with the insurance carrier and even a court's judgment sometimes. So, like I said, the first step is just notifying the insurance company of that claim. And in order for a claims notice to be made, you just have to call the insurance company and notify them of that claim. You're going to be speaking to a representative. Once that notice is received, then that representative is basically assigned to that claim, and they're responsible to coordinate various components and parties that are going to be involved in getting that resolved. And that person is usually referred to as a desk adjuster. So the desk adjuster will assign a field adjuster or an IA to document those damages and complete an estimate. And they're going to be placing a value to those damages. Now, this is where the insurance company sometimes runs into trouble with people or, board members, community associations, because the insurance wants to protect their interest. And at this point, maybe they felt they were underpaid or they were denied or they didn't get enough, AKA being underpaid. So they'll seek out a public adjuster to represent them by having an additional estimate completed in order to assist with the difference in those values. Okie dokie. And so introduction to the claims process. So once the estimates are presented, the claims evaluation process begins and they will do an investigation to determine the extent of loss or damage. Basically, they will be reviewing coverage to determine the amount of coverage that the insured has in order to what they have in place in order to apply that to the loss or damage and see what they're allowed for. And in this part, I actually want to bring in Brandon. He is our commercial insurance agent. He is amazing. I have introduced him to many of my contacts because as soon as they meet Brandon, I mean, how easy is it to read an insurance policy, right? It's not. But once you meet with Brandon, he will lay it out like the ABCs for you. So I want to bring on Brandon, and basically, Brandon, this is where you might be helpful in discussing policy limits and sometimes how community associations will lower their their limits just to have a cheaper or not pay too much on that policy. So Brandon, what have you seen and how can that affect communities and boards?
So if you're referencing in terms of the valuation of the buildings and how they're determining those, is that what you're asking?
So whenever there's damage, if they don't have the applicable coverage or they don't have enough coverage, how can that affect them when they have a damage? And
I gotcha.
What they're covered for is basically what they can get.
Yeah, so there are different things that you have to consider when you're insuring the buildings to make sure that you don't get a penalty at the time of a loss. State statute requires that all condominium associations must purchase an appraisal every 36 months to determine what the replacement cost of the building should be, which that replacement cost is a per dollar square footage. So $100 a square foot, $125 a square foot, so on and so forth. If you don't adhere to that portion of the statute, then most likely, if your valuations just keep renewing, at the time of the loss or at the time of a claim, some policies have something called co-insurance on it. And co-insurance, basically, a very easy way to understand it is co-insurance states that you're telling the insurance company that you're insuring the buildings to a certain percentage of the replacement cost. So if the building is worth $1 million, but you choose to insure the building for $500,000, that means you've only insured the building for 50% of its value. So at the time of a claim, let's just say there's a claim for $10,000. Instead of them paying you the $10,000, they would only pay you $5,000 or 50% of the claim. So basically, the percentage that this is a simple way to understand it. The percentage that you screw the insurance company up front by is what they screw you at the end. So you have to really ultimately make sure that you insure your buildings to the 100% replacement cost, so that at the time of the loss, the claims adjusters don't find a way to penalize you on your claim.
Right.
That's basically.
And I'd like to add a really amazing example. So that co-insurance that you just mentioned, it comes in handy like unbelievably. We had an example once where someone had a claim and their deductible was very high. It was about $850,000, and the damage was valued, just a little over that. So in the end result, they only were able to receive about $50,000 cash value to do the repair. So they had to have that co-insurance kick in, which was, equivalent. So it was another $850,000. So they then were covered in full to do their repairs. But without that, they would have been in big trouble.
Yeah, and one of the other things to note and to add on to avoid a co-insurance penalty that associations really need to look at their policy for is you want to try to eliminate co-insurance if you can and get something on your policy called agreed value or agreed amount. So once you get that on your policy, then the adjuster can't penalize you for potentially underinsuring your buildings. You're making an agreement with the insurance company up front that $1 million is the replacement cost of the building, so that if you did insure it to 600,000 and you were supposed to insure it to $1 million, they would still pay you that 600,000 because up front they've agreed to it. So
Right.
You really need to look for something called agreed amount, which helps in the claims process and the adjusting process, because then you as a board or a manager don't have to worry about having a penalty on top of your deductible.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Brandon.
You're welcome.
So the claims disposition is the final step to this process, to the claims process. At this step, the claim is either denied or paid. And a claim disposition often involves setting the reserves based on information gathered during the investigation and using the valuation method, from the insurance coverage to determine the claim payment. So claims can be settled without going to court, or they can be paid in result of a court judgment. So claims may also be disposed of through a denial if it's not covered by the policy. So that's why it's important to have your coverages correct. And claim payments are sometimes recoverable by the insurer through the rules of subrogation, and if a party other than the insured has liability for the loss. Alrighty, so sometimes you may be thinking, do we have Lee on here with us, Mark?
Lee he's here now.
Okay,
Yes,
so
I'm here.
basically
Hello.
I wanna introduce Lee. Lee he's a president of the community app. And Lee, I just want you to tell us, besides, using your app that you have introduced to the communities real quick, if you can explain to us how easy it is, even if you're looking for just a place to eat, a place to go shopping, but how easy is it to locate a public adjuster that's reputable? If, you're thinking to yourself right now, man, I think I had a claim last month. How easy is it to use your app in order to find someone to help you with that?
Well, first of all, when people come home at the end of the day and they find a broken window or a flood in the kitchen or any kind of problem, they don't even know who to call. And what our app does is it provides everyone with simple, quick access to their public adjuster or to anyone who could help fix their problems at home. It's a great tool, and it's there to make life easier for the board as well as for the residents. And so there's a place there for people to access the number of the public adjuster or for anything else they might need.
Okay, thanks, Lee. So this is a small introduction. I'm going to tell you guys about what types of adjusters you may hear of the word adjuster, but there's different types. So claims adjusters, they're responsible for performing many of the tasks that are involved with the claims process. Sometimes a claim adjuster handles all of the claims process, and sometimes an adjuster is just involved in the investigation and evaluation, or depending on how big the size of the claim is, there might be different adjusters assigned to each part. So the desk adjuster is an adjuster that when you call and report the claim, they're the ones that take the information, and they're like your staff adjuster that's working in the office. Then you have your independent adjuster, and the insurer utilizes this independent adjuster basically to resolve the claims. And an independent adjuster can also be used in geographical localities where the company does not staff a field adjuster. Or the IA, also known as the independent adjuster, can be used as an expert specialist in a certain type of claim. Now, the field adjuster, those are the adjusters that are employed by the insurance company where there's a large amount of volume for them, so a lot of claims, and that they'll go out into the field and help resolve those claims. Now there's public adjusters. The public adjusters are the adjusters who are employed by the claimant, the policyholder, so the community association, the board, or even a regular homeowner, and they will work for that claimant throughout the whole claim resolution process. They assess the loss, they review your policy provisions, they apply the legal principles, they come up with a value, then they negotiate that value with your insurance company. And public adjusters are subject to licensing requirements, which are extremely, extremely important. You got to make sure you're working with a reputable, knowledgeable public adjuster, because they're, in the end, will be representing you. And, they work on your behalf in order to fight the amount of money that they feel that the insured is owed. And they're generally paid a percentage of the claim amount that they negotiate. So there are different kind of claim types. So there's two types of claims. Claims are either first party or third party claims. A lot of party here. It's only Wednesday. The first party claims, so the insured on the policy makes the claim to the insurer. So you just pick up the phone, you're calling your insurance company, you're just telling them what's the problem, right? Third party claims is when someone else is liable for that damage. They're made under a liability insurance policy, and liability insurance protects the interests of the insured against loss or damage. Now, there are policy provisions that affect claims. So insurance policies have provisions, and understanding the provisions are really important, because it depends on the policy that you have. It can either cover the loss or damage that you have, or it doesn't. And so if it does, to what extent will that loss or damage be paid? Now, there are several provisions that are commonly found in property policies that impact that coverage. So additional coverages, what I really want to get into, and I'm going to bring in someone else for a second. These certain coverages are very important, because these payments based on additional coverages may be part of a normal limits of your insurance, and they may have a separate insurance limit separate from the policy. So for example, when there is a hurricane and let's say there is a community association, there's tons of trees down, which I've seen plenty times. Now, let's say the trees are all down, but not a lot of them touched your property. There's not that much damage. However, they did mess up fences all around the community. And at this point, you're not looking at physical property damage, but you're looking at the fences that are down. You can have so much damage in those regards. I want to bring in Charles Infantino with GRC Services. Charles, can you give us an example of what happens after a hurricane and how expensive it can be to, pick up, tree removals, and what a big factor that is after a hurricane, and how have you seen that before, and how expensive it can be? I'm sure he's coming.
Well, maybe
Charles,
he's
you
not
have
on.
to unmute yourself.
He was here. He's
Oh,
just on mute.
Just sent Charles. There he is.
My apologies. Yes, I'm sorry. Large tree damage, large trees toppling off, especially hardwoods, oaks, ficus trees, they have a root ball because they are all surface roots. They can extend anywhere from the trunk of the tree out anywhere from 5 to 10 feet with the roots of the tree. Not only is the tree going to need to be removed and so on, but in the process of that tree going down, cable lines can be destroyed, irrigation lines can be destroyed, so it could be quite costly. A standard medium-sized tree, let's call it an oak tree, for example, that could go down to be anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500, where if you get a big ficus tree that has a lot of surface roots, I mean, it can be as much as $2,500 just for the tree. At times, it's easy enough to get the chainsaw to cut up the trunk of the limbs of the tree to be removed, but a lot of times we have to bring in a flatbed truck and a grapple to pick up the root ball and place it on a flatbed and haul it away. So, there's a lot of additional costs other than the tree coming down that could be incurred, as far as other damage, as far as irrigation lines especially, is going to get tore up and so on. So to answer your question, trees that go down would be the primary one, anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000 per tree.
Right, for one tree.
Yeah, for one tree, exactly.
Right. So we're talking a community association, let's say they have tons of these. So it can get really expensive. That's why these additional coverages are.
It can be more than a roof. It can wind up being more than a roof. Yes.
Catherine, can I jump in for 1 second on
Oh,
that?
yeah.
I just want to interject. This is Jeff. Charles had some muffled audio, so if you have any questions about what Charles mentioned, just send us an email after the event too, with your follow-up email that you're going to receive in the morning. Back to you.
I apologize for that. I didn't realize I was still on mute, but hopefully if there's any questions, fire away.
Catherine, can I just jump in on one thing on that to
Sure.
follow up on that?
Yeah.
So with regard to the actual policy and the trees falling down, everything like that, there's something that, and you could attest to this, something very important that everyone needs to understand about the property policy. Number one, you got to make sure that you have something on your policy called debris removal. Okay. And debris removal is only giving you coverage if those trees fall down on something that you're insuring. So in condos and HOAs, if a tree falls down and lands on a building or hits a fence or hits a tennis court or something that's on the policy that you're insuring, then the insurance company will pay to remove the tree, remove the debris, and fix the piece of property that's damaged. But if the tree just falls down into the middle of the road or the parking lot, the policy doesn't get triggered because it didn't hit something that the insurance company was insuring. So it's really important that the associations and the board members understand that, because that happened a lot in Hurricane Irma. All these trees fell down,
Right.
didn't hit anything that was being insured, and people were really upset that they weren't getting paid. So make sure if the tree falls down, you move it onto your building. No, just kidding. But
Well, Brandon, I want to just jump in. We had so many claims that were just tree issues where they hit a fence and then the whole community was affected because there was a down fence for months and months. And that tiny little additional piece of coverage can make a massive difference. Do
Yeah,
you
it's
do
huge.
you recommend that? Like when you're reviewing association policies, you're okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed in doing so many audits and reviews that there's a lot of insurance agents that fail to put that on there because
Yes.
they're afraid to tell, number one, either they don't know how to properly explain it, or they're afraid to tell the insured, hey, listen, you need to have this because it may cost a little bit more money. And a lot of agents just like to sell the cheapest thing at all times. But it's really, that ends up biting them in the butt at the end of the day, because if something happens and they could have had that coverage for a couple $100 and now they didn't have the debris removal coverage, it affects the association a lot worse at the time of the loss. So it's something that we put on every single policy.
Right.
Very well taken, Brett, at the very level.
So moving on to, let's see here, supplementary payments. Now, the supplementary payments are related to defense expenses that are generally covered under this liability policy. And they're basically expenses for any claim the insurer investigates. So those can include all expenses incurred by the insurer, reasonable expenses incurred by the insured at the insurer's request, including actual loss of earnings up to a specified amount per day due to time off work you had to take, or all costs taxed against the insured in the suit, and even relocation costs. So here in Florida and in all 50 states, there is some language in some form of unfair claim settlement practices. This is very fancy wording for just saying that there are laws that protect you against unfair claim payments. And this is really important because if you feel that you have been paid unfairly, there are laws that protect you against this. So there are also separate model acts created at this time, specifically addressing life and health claims, disability claims, and property casualty claims. And each state has adopted, like I said, some version of the Unfair Settlement Practices Act. Now, this is important because it protects the policyholder, and policy provisions must be examined in order to determine if a claim is covered. So examples of policy provisions that define whether or not a claim will be covered are the limits of the insurance and additional coverages, like we just spoke about, the trees, and other insurance and supplementary payment provisions. Now, certain laws also impact how claims are handled. Now, the unfair claims settlement practice laws found in some form in all the 50 states define what the insurance claims settlement activities are prohibited. So it'll define them in there, and the liability laws define when the legal liability exists. So without legal liability on the part of the insured, then liability insurance policies will not pay for loss or injury. So investigating claims. Now, this is a very important part. So one of the main things is verifying that you have that coverage. So the insurance company pays only those claims that are covered. So if it's not covered, it's not going to be paid. If it's not covered, it's not going to be paid. So basically, if the insurance company were to be paying claims that are not covered left and right, they would have no more money left for them. So they would become financially unstable since the premiums collected would not be sufficient to meet claim payments. And that means that this is a very crucial part of the claims resolution process, is to verify that the claim falls under the coverage parameters. So some of the key items in the insurance policy that an adjuster will review to determine is if a claim is covered are these right here, the policy period. So the claim has to fall within the policy coverage period. For example, if the policy's coverage period is only valid for a certain time, if it did not occur during when that policy was active, that is not a covered loss. That damage will not be covered. And the covered loss, the policy defines what items are going to be a covered loss. It defines them. In some property policies, it's broad, because that allows it to have all causes of loss covered, or perils, make sure that they're covered, except those that are specifically going to be excluded. And in other policies, specific clauses of loss that are covered under the policy are named individually, and they're also defined. So there is no question whether it is covered or not. So still other policies are designed to cover a very specific type of risk and include a very limited list of perils. Now, claim statements and proof of loss. So claim statements, they are made by the insured, and the claimant and the witness to verify or authenticate facts of the claim. Claim statements can either be handwritten, typed, videotaped, or recorded. Nowadays, usually you just do a recorded statement, and that's usually at the request of your carrier. Inventory and receipts. Now here, to receive claim payments, businesses and individuals need to keep inventory records and receipts. Now, fellas, I know you can agree with me that when your spouse or your significant other and you and them are in an argument and they pull out the receipts from wherever ago, date and time stamped, that is exactly how you need to have your receipts together for your insurance company, because without those receipts and proof of this loss, you are not going to have any argument. So they're often critical to prove the existence and the value of the property. So without that proof, the insurer is generally not able to pay for the loss or that damage to the property. So they must be known and verifiable in order to be payable. And it's critical that the insureds and the claimant submit that inventory list, photograph, or receipts to prove the loss or damage. So I am actually going to pass it over to Stephanie right now, so she can go over the actual cash values and the continue investigating claims. You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So I think this would be such a great place to have someone like Joey on from Paul Baines Roofing, because this is really where we deal with that the most. So when you have a claim settlement for an association, oftentimes, and even Brandon, you can maybe elaborate on this. Oftentimes the insurance company will issue a settlement and they will withhold depreciation, so RCV. So what you actually get for your settlement is the ACV, actual cash value. And then you'll end up getting the remaining balance that was withheld once you've shown that you've completed the work that the insurance company has approved to pay for. So it's a little bit interesting. And I know, with roofing companies and contractors, maybe even ServPro, if you're doing build back, you may deal with this as well. But I think it's more for, when a roofing situation is happening. So that's a little bit of the, insight of the ACV, actual cash value, and cost to repair. Brandon, do you have any insight on that? I don't believe there's any way to change that in your policy when you have it issued. It's just
no. So I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah. So
no, go ahead.
there is a reasoning behind why the insurance company does that. So so the proof of loss comes. There's a determination on how much should be paid. And part of the requirement of the policy to get replacement costs is that you actually replace your property. So what they end up doing is they give you the undisputed amount, right? And let's say the claim's $100,000. So they say, okay, the undisputed amount is $80,000. They send you the 80,000. The undisputed amount is 100, but they say the actual cash value right now is 80 grand. They send you the 80 grand, and then they say, okay, no problem. We understand this claim may change and you may have supplemental claims. So we're going to then hold on the side the additional 20,000, which will give you the full replacement cost. As the claim continues on and moves forward and you submit other claims like from ServPro, the roofing company, or make any changes, though the claim continues to get readjusted, and at the very end, when the whole claim is finished, the adjusting company normally comes out and they verify that all of the actual damage that you submitted has been done. And once all of that damage is proved to be done, Then they send you the final check, which is then equal to the replacement cost of the total. And that eliminates insureds from just taking the money and then not fixing the property. So it does protect the unit owners in a condominium in the sense that that the board can't just take all the money and then
Right.
not do what they need to do. So it's a
Right.
protection in one way, and almost every claim does it that way.
Right. And I'll say though that sometimes we see where it's not clear, where someone may not realize that there's an additional, $50,000 that they're entitled to once they show that they've done those repairs. So part of our job as public adjusters is to make sure, one, you understand that there is money being withheld and that you're entitled to that. So it's up to you to go after that after you've finished your repairs, but also to have a valued contractor. So when you work with the right roofing company, if you're filing a roof claim, you want them to be able to move forward with your job and potentially not charge you that full amount of money because they know the insurance process and they can assist you with getting that, maybe applying that towards your overall bill. So those are key things when you're dealing with these large repairs and having the right people in place. So you, one, don't forget money's there for you, and two, maybe utilize it before it's actually paid out with the right contractor.
And that's really a good reason why a public adjuster is needed on larger claims, because insurance companies take advantage, in my opinion, not all insurance companies, but the majority of insurance companies try to take advantage of the uneducated board that doesn't either have a public adjuster involved or have the proper insurance agent advising, and they send out the claim, then they make you sign saying, here's the final offer. You forget to take you forget to take the additional monies due between the actual cash value and your replacement costs, and now the carrier took advantage of you and you've gotten screwed. So
right.
that's
Unfortunately,
an
more often than not, it happens because of the way they're set up.
It's not fair, but that's what ends up.
Yeah.
That's why you have to have the right team around you. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. And I think, Catherine, you're going to go into the signing of a release. I think it's coming up pretty soon, which is kind of, hey, here, sign here. And you don't realize you're kind of ending the entire claim process at that point.
Right. I will.
Matter of fact, Catherine and Stephanie, there's a question as far as, which is tying into what Stephanie is saying, as far as when you get like these 3-party checks, how to handle that as far as, the association has to endorse it, then the insurance company and then the contractors.
So I can elaborate on that. I'm going to read the question. I'm looking at is it the first one from Jeff, or who is that from?
You go into, hey folks, it's from a Jocelyn Collin. If a tree falls in on a parking owned by the association, can the car owner pay the insurance? I guess the question is, how would it be handled if a tree falls on a car on a association owned parking lot?
So what's interesting about that is it definitely gets a little complicated, but essentially the association would likely be found responsible. So what that means is the person would go through their insurance for their car, and then the car insurance company would go after who is responsible, which would likely be the insurance company, the associations and property insurance. Right. So you kind of get to step out of it and allow the investigation to happen without your need for involvement. Brandon, have you seen that happen?
Well, yeah. Let me jump in a little bit on that. I mean, so a tree falls down, and inside an association owned tree falls down and smashes someone's car. And the question is, who's responsible, right? Is that the question, Jeff, basically? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
so
yes,
it depends. If a tree just falls down due to a hurricane, the tree smashes into someone's car, then the person, whoever owns the car, is responsible to fix their car, because the association had no control over a tree smashing onto someone's car, even though it's their tree. However, there's another way to look at it. The other way to look at it is the person who owns the car can go back after the association and say, hey, listen, you didn't maintain your trees properly. You didn't trim the trees back prior to a hurricane. There's no plan to keep the trees from being overgrown. And as a result of you not maintaining the property, the tree fell over, and it wouldn't have if a hurricane, even with a hurricane. And as a result of that negligence to maintain the property, you're now liable for our damage. And that's where the subrogation would come into play, where the person who owns the car would file a claim with their insurance company, State Farm. State Farm would do the investigation. And if they then felt that they could prove that the association was negligent in maintaining the property, they would subrogate against the association's liability policy. And then the liability carrier for the association and the State Farm carriers would determine how everyone would get paid. So it just depends. Every situation is a little different. Did that make any sense to anybody?
Yes, definitely. Well, and
Okay.
kind of to what I was saying in our experiences, when you have a third party claim, you have a condo and there's a leak in the unit above, but there is ensuing damages in the actual unit, right? Then we're able to file a claim and assist that unit owner. And then essentially the insurance company will do a further investigation and likely go after the unit above on their own accord, right? And then hold that other insurance company responsible. So it kind of removes that obligation from the policyholder who's been affected.
Agreed.
Was there a question about third-party checks? I'm not seeing it. If you want to ask it, I can try to answer that.
Yeah, basically, a lot of times when you go ahead and you have a claim and you get a settlement, there's a third party, there's a 3-part check. So it's made out to the association, it's made out to the insurance company, and it's also made out to the contractor.
So I'll say, in my experience, if you're asking how that's processed, typically what we see is that the checks from the insurance company for the settlement for an association or for any property owner, they usually have the mortgage company. If there is a loan, they usually have the association, the board, or the person, the party responsible for the policy, and then a contractor only if there is some sort of agreement in place where that contractor is working with you through the claim and they are going to be paid by the insurance company. So when you have an adjuster, a public adjuster involved who's representing you, the public adjuster handles all of those checks being cleared. So they get the endorsements from all proper parties, and then they disperse the funds to the association, and then the association or to the contractor, whatever your agreement is. But if you do not have a public adjuster and you're handling it on your own, maybe you're using your accountant to assist you with doing that and getting those endorsements, it's just that, right? You have to have the endorsement from the bank, and they're going to make note of the payment that's been received. And then, the disbursements will be made to the appropriate parties. And usually the association is going to be in receipt of the full amount, and then they just pay their contractor.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that.
Stephanie, do you need to bring on Joey?
No, I don't think he's not on, is he? I think we're good. We covered that.
Yeah,
Yes,
he's on.
he is. No, Joey's on.
Hi, Joey. We were just discussing in the claim payments or settlements how sometimes, I do think we did kind of dissect this, Brandon assisted, but we were talking about the ACV and how sometimes the total value of the settlement is withheld, or a portion of it is withheld, and how maybe you deal with that as a roofer, where you assist maybe the policyholder, the association, because you know that those funds are there and will be provided once you've completed your work.
Sure. So obviously, we in roofing, you're running off of terms a little bit with these projects, but there are a lot of times where the insurance company will write us basically a letter, and we work to get that letter processed. with the sense of if we do the work, that they're going to pay us in full, basically. There's times where it's a generic letter that we send to the insurance company and say, hey, sign this and send it back to us. And we really haven't had an issue with that. So when you're dealing with held back, when they're withheld depreciation, so on and so forth, where we're maybe waiting for 30% of our money at the end of the job, well, we will write that letter, or they will let us know, hey, Paul Baines Roofing, we're going to pay you guys the full amount of XYZ when the job is done. So it's not really an issue. It's a little bit of a hurdle to climb because getting a hold of adjusters and so on and so forth can be a little bit of a frustration, which is why we use Kat and Stephanie, because
Right. Well,
it makes
Joey,
it a little bit easier on that for sure.
what we were saying is that it's like really important to have contractors that understand this process, because you'll do the job because you've gotten that form signed, you're entitled to that money. So you're going to move forward and not hold things up throughout this process because it's okay. The money's there. So it's really important that you guys are involved in stuff like this.
Absolutely. Yeah. You got to know what you're dealing with for sure.
Okay, so when the claim comes to a disposition, that just means that the disposition is occurring when it's either settled or it's denied. And this section basically just explains how the insurance company sets aside reserves to pay these claims. Now, it describes different types of releases, which we were mentioning, that they might require a claimant to sign. So these are different methods that are used by the insurance companies to recover some of its claim expenses. And so one of it is, they set their reserves. So if a claim is going to be paid, reserves are set aside in amounts that represent the insurer's best information about the claim. So the amount may increase or decrease as the insurer gathers and verifies more information about the claim. So this is why the investigation part of the claim is important, because the more you have documentation, the more you are likely to have your claim paid. Now, the formula or average reserves and individual case reserves are two methods used for setting reserve amounts. So formula reserves, the claim amounts that can be determined relatively easily and quickly settled, are reserved through the formula reserve method. Past lost experience is utilized to determine the reserve amount. For example, if there's a roof replacement in a city that just experienced a hurricane, commonly costs $45,000, the claims representative may be able to reserve a similar amount based on the normal cost of such a repair. Now, there's individual cases, so like the claims that are more difficult to evaluate and include many claim payment factors, are reserved by the individual case method. And under this method, the claims representative or other claims analysts, they use past loss experience and his or her own judgment and experience to determine the reserve amount. So here with reserves, I wanted to pull you in, Stephanie, so you can go a little bit into detail through reserves. And I know this is a good spot for Mark to, give a little input to. So I'll have you take over on that.
Yeah, I would say, Mark, it would be really amazing to hear your insight here, because we see so many times, it's amazing where associations are underfunded, right? The proper reserves are not set aside for emergency incidences. Something as simple as, water loss affecting an entire common area from one unit, or, something more serious like a roof issue from a hurricane or wind damage. So what do you deal with, or how do you stress the importance of setting aside reserve funds for emergency situations?
Well, reserves under the Florida statutes, basically, an association and the board actually has to approve a budget that has fully funded reserves, and that has at the very minimum roofing, paving, and painting, or any other item that's over $10,000. The only way to go ahead and to negate that is not, the board cannot do that. It has to take a unit owner vote. But one of the other things that I've been really expounding to a lot of my clients, especially during this budget process, is because the insurances have been going up, dramatically. And that's, probably due to the reinsurance, of, even though we don't have, let's say, hurricanes for the last couple of years, the insurance companies go ahead and have something called reinsurance. So the fires in Malibu and the hurricanes in Louisiana, we all pay for. They spread the costs over the whole country. What I have been successful in doing is going ahead and getting involved the banks, and Terry can probably talk on this a little more. But as far as having like a contingency line of credit that would help out for the deductible, I'm assuming that the insurance is going to be proper. You'll have adequate coverage. You'll be utilizing the public adjusters to get the most money you can. But again, you're going to have a deductible. And I've been saying to people to go ahead and have this contingency line of credit so that you don't have to go ahead and use the dirty word special assessment to your unit owners when you need the money the most and very rapidly. When a storm hits or a catastrophe hits, you need to have those funds immediate. It's easy to say, well, we're going to special assess, but that can take, a month before you start getting all the monies in. If you have the proper contingency line of credit set aside, basically you call up the bank and you say, I need this money, and you show proof of invoices, and the money's in the account, could be within minutes. Terry, I don't know if you're still on the line.
I'm on.
Yeah, you may want to
I'm
just
here.
talk a little about contingency lines of credit, which to me, I think is, everybody's running, they're not running an association, you're running a business. Our businesses,
Right.
some of my clients range from anywhere from a few $100,000 in revenues up to, 10, 12, $15 million in revenue. So, you're running a business, and every business has to be prudent to have resources as far as lines of credit to go ahead and to utilize when the necessity, arises. So Terry, maybe you can just talk a little about that. I think would be well worth it.
Okay, I will. As Mark said, the lines of credit are in place for these types of situations. Many times the associations will come in to apply for the line of credit to cover the insurance deductible to begin with. In addition to that, if they have damages, roof situations, piping situations that do result in more dollars than they have in reserves, then you can use the line of credit, or you can come in and actually get a loan, and the bank will give you a loan, a term loan, to do all that work. If you have an insurance claim, the bank will also just wait until you can give you the loan in anticipation of you getting an insurance settlement, but it doesn't necessarily have weight on being approved. So anything that would need funding, the bank would definitely be able to supply either a line of credit or a term loan.
But Terry, let me ask you this. I know I recommend not waiting for the catastrophe to happen. To have that contingency line of credit in place when you don't
Correct.
need it, so that you have it when you do need it.
Yes, it's always better to have it in place now than the mad rush after the hurricane or after the damages come in and say, oh, we have to pay everybody in the next month, and you don't have the funds.
Yeah,
If you have the line of credit in place, you send me the invoice, I put the money in your checking account, you write the check, and your work is finished.
because normally, even as fast as Terry is, it's still a 30-day process from start to finish at bare minimum. It's probably closer to a 60-day start to finish before you can start
Yes.
drawing upon funds.
Yep, start to finish is running, about 30 to 45 days.
Right. There was another question that came up, Catherine and Stephanie, as far as clients might had water damage, and obviously you can only see the damage, on the wet carpet, or you can see the streaks on the walls. but they were concerned behind the drywall. And I know that Adam from ServPro basically has jumped into a lot of my clients also, to actually see the mold that starts growing that nobody really knows about. And that's where really you guys come in as far as public adjusters, because you know where the problems arise. It's not just looking at something, what's behind the walls in a sense, no pun intended. But I know that Adam, he has a full service, as far as ServPro doesn't just do water extraction, but they do mold remediation, which again, a lot of times, even in one apartment, and it may be a vacant apartment, and there was some water damage there, you have to be concerned that that mold is not growing and going into a neighbor's apartment. And the board has a responsibility to make sure that they take care of that. So, between you and maybe Adam, if you can jump in and maybe explain a little more about with mold remediation and all. And Stephanie, you're muted.
Sorry, I like to say one thing and then give this to Adam, but it's amazing to me. I happen to live in a condo. So when I see my building pull out the blow dry machines every once in a while, and then they take out the flooring, and then they replace it after it's dry, and they continue to do that over and over again. They think maybe they're saving themselves a few dollars here and there because the issue is not so large yet. So it may not be worth filing a claim or hiring Adam to do the mold remediation. But it's amazing the amount of damage they cause when they don't treat it right away. So you might not have a massive claim on your hands because you have a unit that's leaking into the hallway or something like that. But if you don't pay attention, it's so much worse if you let it sit there. Then you're liable because people have mold in their homes and they're getting sick. So we 100% recommend making sure you have someone like Adam on call all the time to know how severe something really is, because more than likely you have a claim on your hands if you have water damage, no matter what. Adam, would you agree?
Oh, yes. Kind of like if there's smoke, when there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah.
If there's a water source and once we've discovered it, you have a covered claim. Most of the times, unless you step on a piece of carpet or flooring into a puddle, you're not going to know if your walls are leaking. So it's important to call you guys as soon as possible, because there is a window of time frame where insurance companies will cover your claim or not. If you see a problem and you don't do a water damage and you don't do anything about it within a certain time frame and it turns to mold, insurance companies can say that's considered old mold and they can deny your claim. So obviously rapid response is key in this situation. And, it's just good to have us on dial so we can come check out anything that happens for you guys.
Which in a sense, when you said, to have you on dial, and especially with water damage, it happens so fast. And then you say, where do I call? One of our other COG members, Lee from a community app, has this app, and maybe Lee, you can just go ahead and talk about it as far as having the important vendors, on tap that either the board can utilize or a homeowner can utilize right from their cell phone.
Yeah, it was like what I was talking about a little earlier. First of all, I want to make this clear for everybody that I'm offering this app at no cost for your community. If you're really interested in having this, and this is for two reasons. Number one would be for communications between the boards and the residents, but also for information, important information like where to get things done. Everything will be on that app. And everything is just a touch away. As soon as you touch that particular vendor or that particular individual, you're calling them from your cell phone. And many people, most people in the community don't use the community website, but everybody's on their cell phone all day long and they're using apps. So this is a perfect opportunity for the communities to get on board. We could make this easy for you. It's easy to use. It doesn't cost anything. And I'd be happy to show you how. If you want, I could schedule a Zoom meeting and I can teach you. It's not very difficult at all.
Okay, and just, let me just, if I can just pop right in, because I see another question that came in on my cell phone, actually. And this is, I guess, really for Adam from ServPro. Adam, how do they determine whether there's mold or not? I mean, do they have to start ripping out, drywall? I know that you had told me about that you have some high-tech instruments that you can actually see moisture, or maybe you can just go into that a little more.
Sure. So typically, if you don't see any mold visibly, if a water damage that you know of has been there for 72 hours or more, you're more than likely going to develop mold in the inside of your wall cavity. Even if your water damage comes from the ceiling or the roof, it's always going to follow gravity and hit the floor. Usually, if you remove the baseboards or your trim that you have on your wall, you can tell if you have mold growth or not. We do have aerosol detecting quality systems that test for mold as well. We offer those kind of services, but typically, if you do need to start removing material to discover mold. Mold has a musty odor or a scent that is undeniable. So if you experience that and don't see anything, you probably have mold within your walls. But there are ways to check: moisture detecting equipment, infrared cameras, and then good old-fashioned mold testing to discover, what you're dealing with in each individual room.
Also, Catherine and Stephanie, there's another question they were talking about as far as, the cost, as far as, are there any upfront costs, to public adjusters? You have a lot of people running around, and I know this from a personal experience. You have a lot of people that are running around calling themselves public adjusters, and I call them in French shysters. And that was really one reason why we were so happy that, you and Stephanie joined, the group, because you just basically, I mean, in addition to being thoroughly knowledgeable and experienced, and nice people to work with, you're honest. And that's so important, especially in the public adjusting field. You really, it's unfortunate, but from my experience, you really just don't have a lot of honest public adjusters that you can count on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One main thing that I always say is, if you do feel like you have a damage, it's always important to have someone take a look at it first, someone that's knowledgeable, someone that's, in the industry, preferably, your public adjuster, or, your close insurance agent. Like, if you're working with Brandon, he's works so close with the boards and the community associations where, if we go out there and we inspect, we really look at the damage and we let you know if it's worth it or if it's not, because there's no use in contacting your insurance company and or explaining maybe a damage that you are not explaining correctly, or, telling them of a problem which is not worth, notifying them of, because that can count against you. And you could not be covered on your policy. You should basically be making sure that before you call anyone or make any claims, you have an expert go out there, inspect, take a look at the damages, and really give you their expert opinion on, okay, you should move forward with filing a claim, or maybe you should get this, fixed on your own, because sometimes you may be under deductible. And you don't want to find out that you're undeductible or you're not covered by this after you file a claim.
And
So
Kat, let me jump in on that just to bring it all back to reserves, which is where the slide started, because it's a really good point. So everything that we just talked about ends up being important in the claims process, because the rapid response that you have on a claim and the educated people like an adjuster to come out to make sure that you're filing a claim that makes sense all goes back to how the insurance company sees you as a good risk. And a reserve is what the insurance company says they're going to end up potentially paying out on a claim. So if you have an open reserve of $40,000 or $50,000 and you keep that open too long, or you file a claim and you don't realize that it's potentially underneath your deductible or it may not even be worth it, having an open reserve on your claims history, which is called your loss runs, is what the insurance company looks at to determine what your renewal premiums are going to be. So you need to make sure as a board that you have the right team around you when a claim occurs, so that number one, it's worth filing the claim, because you don't want to file a claim and then have an open reserve. And even if that reserve ends up being $3,000, that's an occurrence that the insurance company sees on your policy that stays with you for 5 years. So you need to make sure that you have the right public adjuster or adjuster out there helping to make sure it's worth the claim. You have to make sure that you respond quickly enough to make sure, like using a ServPro, for instance, to make sure that you get in and get out and get the claim handled quickly, because the longer a claim is open, the worse it is for your renewal premiums. You got to make sure that you have someone in there that can do the job properly, so that you don't have to call people back in and out. There are just so many factors that you need when handling a claim to make sure that you're filing the claim quickly, getting the claim closed, getting it done right, and keeping your reserve as low as possible to make sure that your insurance premiums don't skyrocket just because you have a claim. I think it's really an important factor, because a lot of board members don't realize how important that reserve number is to making sure your premiums don't go up 10, 20, 30, 40, 50%.
Right. That's extremely important. And I mean, depending on who you call to come take a look at your damage, some might say, yeah, sure, you have a claim, I'm signing you up right now. And they will take you through the ringer, and you are not going to have a good time. And then your experience,
and they're not considering.
Right. Your experience using a public adjuster is always going to be a negative one. So, and down here, at least where we are in Florida, it's tough. It's a tough market, because, there's a lot of people just scamming others into filing claims left and right. And me as a public adjuster, I'll tell people, do not do it if it's not worth it for you, because at the end of the day, we're going to look bad. You're going to be upset, and it's not going to be a good party for anyone. So,
and you're going to pay more at the end.
Right. So, here is something I'm just going to start touching up on. So we spoke on, the reserve factors. I'm going to go into a claim denial. So a claim disposition also includes the denial of a claim. So it can either be paid, underpaid to your standards, or denied. So if the insurer will only pay claims for which it's legally obligated to pay. As discussed, if an insurer pays claims that it's not obligated to pay through the terms of policy, the insurer will not collect enough premiums to establish reserves for themselves. So they only pay claims that are that they're legally obligated to pay and which are covered. So claims are denied for many reasons. These include the claim is smaller than the applicable deductible. That's why it's important to have somebody take a look at it, because that's a waste of a claim and waste of everyone's time. Proof of the loss, damage or injury is not provided to the insurer. So having receipts, having photographs, having documentations, having all that ready for you to submit, that is the extreme importance. So, or the claim is filed after the period of time in which a claim may be filed under the policy terms. An example to this is Hurricane Irma. So when Hurricane Irma happened, after it happened, you had 3 years to file a claim. They give you that time frame in order to file a claim. Maybe you don't see damage the first year, maybe you start some leaks happening the second year, and you have 3 years from that occurrence, from that hurricane, in order to file a claim in regards to that storm, to that hurricane. So the last day to file was September 9th or 10th of this year. And if you decide, on September 20th that, that leak, that we've been continuously having, I'm going to file it for Irma. No, that period is done. That allowable time, that claim is going to be denied right away. That's just what that means. And when a claim is denied, the insurance company must provide the claimant with the reason or reasons that it was denied. So at this time, an insured can still obtain a public adjuster or an attorney to overturn this decision should there be a wrongful denial. So us as public adjusters, speaking from experience, we've been able to overturn a denial. We are able to review, go back, negotiate, and only under one circumstance, which we're going to go into next, is that we're not able to help you and overturn any kind of denial, and that's when you sign a release. But release are usually when you get a payment. So sometimes attorneys are involved when a claim is denied or underpaid. If we have to use an attorney, you have to go that route. So with the settlement, so when the insured and the insurer come to an agreement about a claim amount and the payment of the claim is made, that claim is considered settled. So generally, the state law dictates the amount of time the insurer has to pay a claim after a settlement. Now, releases are really important. So the insurer will usually ask you to sign a release once a payment is made. And that claimant may not sue for any additional amounts arising out of that one loss. So once you receive your settlement, they'll ask you, can you please sign this release? That basically says you're not allowed to go back and ask for more monies, and that claim is done. So depending on the circumstances surrounding that claim, the language of a release varies. So a general release is just used when there is just one claimant, so just between the insurance carrier and the insured. And there's other kinds of releases, like a joint tortfeasor or covenant not to sue release form, which is used when there's more than one party responsible for the claim, and it's worded so that the form only releases the insurer from further action by the claimant and does not release any other tortfeasor. An open-ended release is used when there will be ongoing expenses for which the insurer will be paying. And I'm glad, Terry got to speak a little bit, because I was going to go over when there is a denial, and let's say the community association does not want to go into a lawsuit or does not want to pursue further legal action, maybe they want to go into obtaining, a line of credit or a loan in order to fix those damages. So I'm glad, Terry, you got to speak on that. However, when you do have a claim and it is underpaid or denied, if you went through with that claim, you might as well continue it till the end, or get a public adjuster to take a look at it. That way you're not going into a lawsuit, and having to sue your insurance company. So right here, I'm going to save this for next. I'm just going to go into real quick the last, one of our last slides, which is the 5 most common filed claims: roof damage, water damage, storm damage, even vandalism, and fire damage. So roof damage, we have Joey on here. Joey is amazing when it comes to finding roof damage. Joey, when, for example, when we had that last storm and you would be going out to houses, what do you really look for to, you know, really prove that there is roof damage on a roof?
Yeah, I mean, it varies, you know. Obvious water intrusion, you know, that's a big deal. Where's it coming from? Where's the source? Flat roofs different on condominiums. It varies, you know. Condominiums with shingle roofs, are there shingles that are missing on the roof? Were they wind blown? You know, most of the time, obviously, if we get hurricanes or if we're getting our stronger winds, we're going to have east side. Most of the time, it's going to be east, northeast side of your building due to the side of where the wind's coming in from. Tile roofs, you know, associations that have tile roofs, that is a huge spot, because there's a lot of these tile roofs that are, if they're over 10 years old, there may be what we call discontinued tile on those roofs, meaning that there is no longer a readily available tile through the product approval of Miami-Dade. So there's many different ways to find the damage on the roof, whether it's shingle, flat, tile, I mean, metal roofs. You know, you see it all the time. You know, it's just a matter of getting on the property and seeing it. You can't look at it from an aspect of, I'm on the ground, I have an 18-story building, and I'm going to look at it from the ground level. It has to be something that you got to get on it. You have to see, you know, you have to really see what you're looking at. You got to go through it with a fine-tooth comb.
And one of the damages, you know, obviously storm damage is a really big one. We have Craig with us here. Craig handles janitorial services. Is he with us here today?
I think Craig was on.
I thought I had seen him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think he had to sign off, but
okay.
But I in answer to that, Catherine, I know that, you know, clients, you know, as their accountant, they'll usually give me a call when there's a problem. And Craig, you know, his company, like a lot of the other members, you know, they jump in very quickly to go ahead and to do a lot of the cleanup and light repair.
Right.
You know, especially when you have the water damage, or you have vandalism, or you have fire damage, or any other kind of, catastrophe. You know, there's always a mess. And he has a full staff. He has all the right equipment, and he has the right resources to go ahead and to jump in really, and to go ahead and to take care of it. And again, you know, he not just a regular routine janitorial work. You know, he specializes also in that cleanup that's always necessary, because if you don't have the cleanup, obviously it leads to possibly further liability. Somebody can trip over, you know, certain things that need to be cleaned up and all.
Right. And not just cleanup. I know he helps with the, you know, beginning of, you know, getting everything prepared before the storm, and securing up the building as well.
Absolutely. There's so many condominiums that they don't have a full staff, and they can tap off of Craig's company to go ahead and to prepare everything
Right.
before a storm hits. There was also, and I think that you may be getting into it, but there was again another question, you know, with Adam when it came to, you know, I know one of your slides says water damage. And they were asking, you know, what should be done and what can be done, you know, when there's water damage. You know, what type of equipment do you bring in? How long does it stay on for? You know, and the timing. So maybe Adam, maybe you can just jump in. I think that's what Catherine put down water damage for.
Yeah, for water damage, depending on what type of situation it is it a clean break coming from a pipe? Is it from a water heater, or is it from flooding from a storm? Each of these water damages have different classifications, but almost always you're going to have to need to use dehumidifiers. I know that someone mentioned blow dryers. My mom calls them snails, but air movers are pretty commonly used if the water is a category 1 or category 2, which is considered mostly a clean break, where there's not that many contaminants and pollutants in the water itself. If it's flood water, you're going to need to use dehumidification and cut out whatever material has gotten wet, including furniture needs to be discarded. So it's all about what kind of storm or event or what kind of loss it is. But water damages are tricky because most of the time you have water damage, you're not going to notice it until you actually step in a puddle or until you see mold or smell something on a wall.
Or you have sick residences from breathing in mold for a long period of time.
Right. Right. I mean, that is tricky. You could have a lot of mold developing in between your wall cavity and not know it. I'm willing to bet that every house in Florida has a little bit of mold somewhere.
Yep.
Agreed.
So we're getting here to the end of our slides. This is pretty much it. I'm just going to go back to a small little recap that we have here. Now you all know what is a claim. You know, their demands from the policyholder or other parties to the insurance company requesting payment for their losses. What's a first party claim? This is when the insured makes a claim to pay for repairs to his or her property. What's the first step in the claims process? Notifying the insurance. And the part of the claims process when the value of the loss or damage is calculated. That's just a claims evaluation. The final step of the claim process is referred to as a disposition. I'm giving you all the answers here. The type of adjuster who's employed by the claimant is a public adjuster. We represent the person filing the claim. And ABC Insure employs claims adjusters who work outside of the home office and investigate claims in an assigned geographical territory. Those adjusters are known as field adjusters. So pretty much that is nearing the end. Stephanie, do you have anything you would like to input?
Congratulations, guys. You made it through almost 2 hours with us. I would just like to answer one of the questions about the defects that were discovered after an insurable event. So that is an interesting question, and it can get really technical and complicated. If you have a defect, but you've been insured for 5 years and no one ever realized it, is it really a defect? You know, that is something that if it's caused an issue where now damage has occurred, technically that defect has been insured the entire time. So you have a claim, right? But it's not a hard, fast answer there. I think when you realize you have a defect, if it's causing some sort of problem, that's when you let your insurance company know and then hire someone that can be your set of eyes to kind of tell you what they believe would be the best route and if there's something you can or you're entitled to. That's why you hire an adjuster on your side to kind of tell you, hey, you know, your insurance company is saying no to this, but we know based on policy language and based on the fact that it's been insured for so long that we can get you X, Y, and Z, or you are entitled to X, Y, and Z. So I think in general, claims can be tricky. You never really know. Every single claim is different. The more educated you are in the process, the better. And the more vendors you have that you work with, like Paul Bange, they know claims, like Surf Pro, they know claims. You want people that understand what you're going through on your side.
Stephanie, can I add one thing to that?
Yeah.
So I'm just, you know, I've worked with you, obviously you guys a while. The one thing I saw on there was to contact your insurance company when you have a claim. And it's not great, but it is a little bit great in the sense of I've had many customers file claims on their own and mess their claims up from the moment they get on the phone with the insurance company. Okay. So having them on, they can file the claim for you. Okay, United's claim specialist can file the claim for you and not put yourself in a position where you get pigeonholed from Jump Street. And it happens every day where the desk adjuster gets on the phone. You get on the phone with the desk adjuster. When was the damage? Oh, I just noticed it yesterday, but it could have been an ongoing from the last storm. Okay.
That's such an amazing point, Joey. And I'll say that in that slide, really, we were just trying to show like when does a claim start? It
Sure.
starts when the insurance company has been notified.
Yep.
Does that necessarily mean that you should be the one notifying? No. Because like to your point, Joey, we've seen people file claims as water damage claims, and really it's a roof claim. So it's technically categorized under wind versus water, but you first noticed the water intrusion. So it definitely can mess you up. And then you'll be denied for water intrusion because there's no actual cause, because you didn't realize it was actually caused by the roof problem. So you need Joey to help with that. Yeah.
So, and one other point, and I'll leave it alone. The IRMA claims, just so that everybody knows, if an HOA, a condo association, whatever, had an IRMA claim that was denied, even though we are out of the 3-year limit statutory where we can file the claims, if you were denied within those 3 years, those claims can be open for an additional 5 as long as the claim was done within the first 3 years.
Yes.
Okay, so keep that in mind. If anybody has had a denied claim from an Hurricane Irma claim, let us know where we can help. These are still viable. We can still get in there and help you guys.
Right.
Can I just-
I want to chime in one thing. I think just the bigger point in this whole seminar, in general, is that associations need to have the right team members that they trust in all different circumstances. I've seen with so many associations that I insure, and that's almost 600 now, that a lot of board members are more reactive when the situation happens instead of being proactive and make sure that they have their right accountant, that they have the right attorney, they have the right insurance agent, they have the right public adjuster, they have their right roofers ready and vetted, so that when something does occur, no matter what it is, they know who they work well with. They know that they can trust whoever that they're working with, so that they cannot get taken advantage of. People get taken advantage of when they're not educated and they're just reacting, instead of they have a plan, they know what they need to do, and then they implement when something happens. I think that's a very, very important thing that boards don't realize how important that is.
Absolutely. Agreed 100%, Brandon.
Brandon, that kind of goes along with our tagline, the best time to find an expert is before you really need one. So
That's true.
Exactly.
That's true. Charles, I guess maybe you want to answer. There's one question here. Do you recommend palm trees be trimmed 2 times per year to protect association liability?
yes,
Okay.
palm trees twice a year, hardwoods either every year or every other year, but palm trees twice a year, because let's look at your flying debris, flying missiles. And, whether it's a little storm or a big storm, they can do a lot of damage. But yes, palm trees twice a year.
Okay. All right.
If I can just jump in really quickly, because I know most of all the members of the CAR group had a chance to speak. We have one person who's been quiet the whole time, only because it really doesn't relate that much to public adjusting. It's Mark Mims from Mims Paving. Mark, I think you're still on. If you can unmute yourself and maybe go ahead and just say a few words. I have a feeling Mark fell asleep on us because he wasn't engaged.
Done with
Basically,
Zoom calls.
well, let me just say this. Maybe he had to walk away. Mark basically specializes, in paving, seal coating, and pavers. And I know it doesn't really relate that much to the topic at hand, but he's really one of our specialists and he's part of the group. I just wanted to give a shout out to him. And the last person before we end is really Jeff from Support Depot, who orchestrated this this seminar. I've done a lot of Zoom calls, with all my clients and all. Some want to do it by themselves. And it usually never goes as smooth as when you have, again, a professional who that's their forte. Just like, our other members of CARD basically are all experts in their field. Jeff, if you can unmute yourself and maybe just tell a little about your services, how it relates to the different board member meetings. I know whether it's a budget meeting, whether it's an annual meeting, or now, especially with COVID, nobody wants to go ahead and be in one small room with everybody shoulder to shoulder. And it really is, it's the new technology. It's the new future, really. So Jeff, if maybe you can just say a couple of words. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think it's well worth that everybody knows of this type of service, because, for the property managers and for the board members, when the Zoom call goes effectively and efficiently, it makes a world of difference.
Well, thanks for the kind words. I appreciate working with everybody here, as well as some members of our audience that I've recognized. Thanks for joining us. But yeah, this technology, it's been here a while, but it's come to the forefront recently. And whatever the new normal ends up as, this isn't going away. And again, I'm not an attorney, but I've also heard rumors that there'll be something coming up over the next legislative session to address the remote meetings, even when we're not under emergency powers. So again, this is here to stay. It'll be here in some way, shape, or form. And if you have any questions, comments, or want to talk about working together, nothing is too small. We can work things out. Feel free to drop a line via our website or in the question and answer. Thanks very much.
All right. Catherine or Stephanie, do you want to have any closing remarks, really? I have to tell you, this presentation, we've done many of them. This is probably one of the best presentations that we've had. And it was very enlightening. And it's something that a lot of people just really don't know about, or they shirk even wanting to know about it.
Yeah.
But, it's money in the pocket. Normally there's no upfront cost to hire you.
Right.
I think that was one of the questions that I was alluding to before. And it's really a win-win for the association, and the boards look great and the property managers look great when they bring you in, because you make them look good.
And I'll just say, thank you so much for that. I think something that we're really passionate about is trying to help people understand that we're not just a service that's trying to make money from you. We really are like your mouthpiece, your advocate in a process that can be daunting. And we want to help you make sure that you're not underwater when you have incidences occur. So we just want to educate, and we hope that you definitely got something valuable out of this.
Yeah, one thing I will say too, we have come into HOAs and community associations, and we have provided education for the board and for the community association members there. So we're open to doing that because it's we've realized we've met great people, and not only that, but we've been able to help tremendously create great relationships and just, answer any questions that a board may have, a community association. We create something to show them what to take, what the next steps are, and just having someone like a public adjuster on your phone that you can call, as soon as you have an issue is extremely important. So having that, resource there for you. So we're open to meeting anyone if you want to meet or answering any questions, aside from here, we'll be happy to help.
Alrighty. I don't see really any further questions right now. Again, you can reach us at the website CARG, C-A-R-G, the number 4, and then the word help, HELP.org. So it's CARG for help.org. You can contact all of us. You can see some of our bios and the services that we perform. And there's no obligation. We're here really as a resource group. We're here to go ahead and to talk to you and give you some advice if we can. You can take it or leave it. But all the members have been vetted. We just don't take anyone, into the group. We thoroughly vet them, speak to them, and
I have to give blood. I have to give blood. Mark's telling the truth.
What it is that we all work together so that, if one person recommends the other person, in our group, we all try to go 110% over what we would normally do, because we all know that if one of us lets down one of our clients, we're not going to get that referral again. So there's a little extra assurance there that, the members of the group, are there really to help you to the best of their ability. Again, I want to thank everybody.
Mark, if I may interject before we go, I see some Q&As about CAM credits, what's going to happen, certificates, so on and so forth. Our providers, Catherine and Stephanie, they'll be processing the CE credit and will send any requested attendance certificates. You don't have to worry about typing anything here right now. They will receive full reports of all the questions, the contact info, if you had any additional questions. When you registered, you entered your CAM numbers, so they will be there as well. They will receive all of this. You have nothing further to worry about. If we have a question, we'll email you if we're missing something. Mark, back to you. Sorry about that.
No, I'm glad that you said that, because there were quite a few questions about that. Does anyone else on the panel really want to have any last word? I guess not. I guess the cat got everybody's tongue here.
Just stay safe out there. Get your shopping done. Keep your distance. Be careful, and we'll see you at the next meeting. Just be careful out there, everybody.
Yeah. All right. Thank you again to the panelists, and thank you again, especially to all the participants that signed on.
Yes, thank you. I'll try and connect with everyone on LinkedIn too. That way we can all keep in touch.
All righty.
Happy
Sounds
holidays.
Bye, everyone. Be safe.
Holiday.
Bye.